ASU and ASU Kerr acknowledge the 22 native nations that have inhabited this land for centuries. Arizona State University's 4 campuses and ASU Kerr are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of indigenous peoples, including the Akimel Autumn and Peeposh Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. We acknowledge the sovereignty of these nations and seek to foster an environment of success and possibility for Native American patrons and communities.
Well, good morning. My name is Tracy Mason. I'm the general manager here at ASU Kerr, and we are so grateful to have Arizona Opera with us today on this beautiful, glorious day. Aren't you glad you're not back east with all those snowstorms? And just want to do a shout out and a gratitude, huge thanks to Renegade Coffee for the coffee cake and coffee. I guess those who missed the wonderful coffee cake just have to get here earlier next time. But you can always visit Renegade because they are right down the street, right down McDonald, right at 82nd and McDonald, and I go there all the time. I get coffee, I get the egg bowl. They have wonderful food and wonderful drinks, so I highly recommend that you stop by there or utilize them for your catering needs for your parties. All right, I just have a couple of announcements. If you have never been here before, the restrooms are back that way. Please feel free to utilize them. And would you please check your devices so that we don't disrupt this program today with any kind of ringtones of any kind of devices. And I just want to mention that, while these are free programs, they do take some money to keep up the building and the staff and all of the things that we do to create these wonderful relationships like we did with Arizona Opera many, many years ago. Coffee at Kerr used to have many more dates, but we were finding that we just couldn't make many, many more dates happen because of the low donations. So we do ask just for a very small suggested donation of $5 if you're able to do that. Of course, if you are not able, we love having you here anyway. And the other way to help this beautiful space thrive is by coming to our paid shows. Well, we have several really great shows coming up through this month still. We're kind of in the middle of the season. So this week, if you are a country and western fan, we have Lacey J. Dalton coming. You should take a look at our website for her. She's still got some great tickets available. We have our comedy show. We have a comedy series here. How many of you knew that? See, we have a great Comedy at Kerr series here, so I highly suggest you come. It's every other month, end of the month. We also have this fabulous duo, Guitar Dreams, and we also have a duo brother-sister team, and Sophie, the sister of this duo, is going to be on American Idol. So, they are phenomenal. I've seen them. They are just a phenomenal brother-sister singer-songwriter duo, fabulous voice, very strong, amazing people. And that's right at the end of the month on the 31st, still tickets for that. So we provide quite a nice variety, so we hope you'll take a look at the website. We also have some flyers out with the whole rest of the season. So if you are not online, let me know. I'm happy to give you one of those flyers. So for now, I'm going to stop talking, and please, please give a warm welcome to Arizona Opera.
Well, good morning. My name is David Schildkret, and I'm curious how many of you in one place or another have attended a lecture or a talk that I've given, just by a show of hands? Yeah, I thought so. I'm notorious. Well, we're going to do something a bit different this morning because we have with us, this is going to feed back. There we go. We have with us the stage director of the upcoming production of Madama Butterfly, Zhou. Please welcome.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. If you have seen Bohème last year, you probably remember I also directed Bohème last season. That was my Arizona opera debut. And I'm really, really glad to be back in warm and sunny Arizona in January with my little Chihuahua. She's the happier one because everybody's like, I'm busy working. So very, very honored and proud that bringing this brand new Madama Butterfly here with Arizona Opera this season.
How many of you seen Madame Butterfly somewhere, sometime before? Almost everybody. Is there anybody in the audience who will admit it, who is going to see this opera and it'll be the first time you've ever been to an opera? Any first-time opera goers?
Yeah, great.
We always like that. We like the people who come back, too. We need them. So we're going to conduct this as an interview because I think that Madame Butterfly is actually one of the most problematic works in the standard repertory. I think it's, if not the most performed opera, it's one of the 2 or 3 most performed operas. But I think a lot of us respond to it on a very superficial level, and having Zhou here helps us to go deeper and to explore these problems, and particularly how you are solving them. So, what was your first encounter with Madame Butterfly?
Well, I grew up in China. I spent the first 18 years in China, came to the United States when I was 18, and the whole time I thought I was going to Harvard Law School because I'm that generation, growing up with watching Legally Blonde. So, you know, Butterfly, you always knew that's an opera, but I had no idea about the music or content because I was not artistic at the time. But I always tell everyone the story, you know, when I was 18, first week, when I was in Maine, I went to Bowdoin, so a small town in Maine, 18 years old, you know, going to Hanover grocery store to grocery shopping. First week, and then a gentleman, just older gentleman, stopped me and called me Cio-Cio-San and walked away. And at the time, no idea. I was like, why is he calling me a Japanese name? So it's not until years later when I accidentally fell into opera directing, I finally collect the dots. I said, oh, it's Butterfly, Madame Butterfly. So, and it's very, very interesting. The very, very first opera I saw in this country was 2008 at City Opera, Madame Butterfly, sung by none other, our very own Yuna Lee, who is teaching here in Tulsa. So that was my encounter. But I think, you know, I actually, as a director, I was offered to assist and direct Butterfly many times, but I always said no for the past decade, because I think the narrative and also understanding the cultural impact of this popularity of this work, their impact on how Asian women are being perceived in the mainstream Western culture, is always very challenging and problematic to me. So I always say I don't want to contributing to this harmful stereotypes without finding out a solution. So that's my kind of like a jarring first encounter with the Madame Butterfly as 18 years old, being catcalled as Cio-Cio-San without even knowing what that meant, 20 years ago.
So this is the very first opera you saw?
Yeah, first opera I saw in the States, City Opera, 2008.
So it's
Yeah.
coming full circle. What was
Yeah.
your reaction to Madame Butterfly at City Opera?
I hate it. I love the costume. I love, like the spectacle, the music, everything is really great. I was very moved by it. But it's, the ending, you just always, as an Asian woman, you always feel like there's something irksome. There's always the ick. And I couldn't really articulate that. And then I realized, the issue is I cannot really see her as a real person, as an Asian woman. And I coined the phrase, it's like a Disney. So every butterfly later I saw became, for lack of a better word, I say it's Oriental Disney. It's putting on what the Western creators think Japan looked like and how a Japanese woman should behave from their lenses. And that's so different from the Japanese I know, the culture I know, or any Asian woman I know. And I think the more we reinforce that, I'll give you an example, like, it's a little bit TMI, but it's whatever, it's live streaming, but whatever, I'll just say that. I just remember very early on in my early 20s, in my dating life, I dated someone, that person just said, I want you to put chopstick in your hair. I was like, why? And I said, we don't do that in China. And he said, but I think that's like make you look like more, like, yeah, so it pleases me. So it gave you so much example of what I call the perpetuating hypersexualization, exoticize and objectify Asian women in the mainstream because of the popularity of the show, and also as a result, the Miss Saigon. So I think, this show is it has done a lot of harmful impact on how Asian women, particularly Asian female immigrants, are being perceived in America and as well in the West. Yeah.
I've been
sorry.
married.
That's why I talked to you TMI. It's a little bit early.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're not still with the guy who asked you
No.
to wear the
No.
My wife and I have been married 47 years. If I suggested what she wear, I don't think we would have made it this long.
But a lot of like that moment being called Cio-Cio-San is 18 years old, and in my early 20s, my then boyfriend said, put chopstick in your hair. I think, I realized in their eyes, they never fully see me as who I am. They never see me as Mo. They see me as this beautiful Asian object, or whatever the Asian woman I have in mind. And you kind of need to perform like her, the vision I had in my mind. And I try to ask, where do the people get those ideas, how this Asian woman should behave? It has a lot to do with, Susie Wong, Madama Butterfly, and so that's kind of like a stereotypes, misrepresentation continues. Yeah.
So what is the danger of that, of putting those stereotypes on the stage?
Number one, you turn her, what I say, she has no agency. It's almost like I live for love and therefore please love me, which is, understandable. I was talking to, when I'm directing the show in Arizona, I talked to our Butterfly a lot. I said for any girls growing up in East Asia, regardless you're Chinese, Japanese, Taiwanese, Korean, our own patriarchal culture is we were conditioned from a very young age that we seek the validation from outside, and we particularly associate this external validation of being chosen, being loved by an ideal man. And in this context, Butterfly is double compounded with being chosen, being loved by the ideal American man, which in her view is much, much better, or dominant culture and gender. So, what was your question again? How did I get here?
It doesn't matter. This is fascinating. No, yeah. I was asking you about the harm.
Oh yeah, the harm. So sorry. Go back. So in that case, so every time, when I'm doing Butterfly, so I finally said yes to my first Butterflies because I've been thinking about this for 10 years as a director. So I always say, how can I solve Madama Butterfly when have the story make sense to me as an Asian woman? So my first instinct is I need to find a time period to see her as a real person. I need to have a scenario, a societal historical backdrop that this kind of woman will truly exist. Then I can understand what's their pathos and all that psychological arc. So that's when I did all the research about the whole original butterfly myth. So it's actually few people realize Madama Butterfly is based. So it's if you trace back all the genesis, the first one like Madame Chrysanthemum's all the memoirs, and then you have the John Luther Long's short story about Madama Butterfly, which is adapted from his own sister Jenny Correll's oral history. So Jenny Correll was an American missionary's wife being stationed in Nagasaki, and they work in American consulate at the time during Meiji era, turn of the century. So at that time, there was a real, very, very big social scandal as American soldier falling in love with a young Japanese tea house called Cio-Cio-San, which means butterfly in Japanese. And then that was a huge scandal when they break up, but there was no suicide, there was no child and no American wife coming back. So Jenny Correll has a very, very detailed, oral history. You can still find the transcripts online. So that's when I studied all of that and I read all the myths. That's when you realize the moment you have, again, like Turandot, the moment you have a Western male interpreter coming in to reinterpret the stories. That's why all the tropes are added in. The suicide, please love me, look at me, geisha, and the child, American wife. And then it's no coincidence that all Butterfly or Madame Chrysanthemum all took place in Nagasaki. Nagasaki as a city carries significant historical and cultural importance in history. Because in Japanese Sumara history, 400 years, there's an era called Dejima, so meaning Japanese Sumara shut the whole country down, locked the country, so we have no influence from the western side. But there's only one city that's opened up as foreign trading port, that was Nagasaki. So Nagasaki was like the front line dealing with East and West clashes. Religion-wise, Francis Xavier, when he was trying to preach Catholicism in Far East, his landing dock was Nagasaki. If you go to Nagasaki right now in the suburb, there's an island called Goto Island. It literally means the island of God in Japanese. That's his landing dock. So Nagasaki essentially become the birthplace of Catholicism in East Asia. And then during the 400 years, you could only imagine the entire religious conflicts and clashes. And then, there's in the past 400 years, many Japanese Catholics were, were massacred essentially there. And there has all the Catholicism, martyrs, like, memorial sites out that. And on top, so that's why if you read all the regional source material, the real butterfly story in Nagasaki during turn of the century, there's some very, very deep-seated and sizzling clash between East and West, and between religion, between so many things. And I also think Nagasaki is the front line of Western colonization in that time period. But when you're being turned into, David Belasco's play on Broadway or Puccini's Butterfly, it all got glossed over, sugar-coated as a very simplified love story. So to me, how can I find a time period where modern audience can understand this sizzling, thorn in the heart of the original piece without me writing a 200-pages thesis in the program, is really how to identify a time period that any American or any Western audience can instantly spot this kind of clash. So very fortunately, there was a very specific time period in history where I personally can justify this whole narrative. That's actually took place in post-war II from 1945 to 1952. General MacArthur took over Japan. It's Allied occupation of Japan, but in Japan it was known as American occupation of Japan. Essentially, General MacArthur took over and ran the country for 6 years, and then so that's where when Japan was going through the most significant political and cultural, adjustment with American military presence and influence. What is more interesting is during that 6 years, 45,000 Japanese women legally married American GIs and moved here, which were known as war brides. And when you know that facts, and then Stanford, a lot of universities did a very great archival. You can still find it online. You'll find all of those Japanese immigrants, women, their oral history talk about how did they fall in love, why did they choose to move to America, and what is their experience really like moving to a very complicated, intricate post-World War II American society. And they will tell you the moment they landed in America, their in-laws are asking them to take off their kimono, change your name into Jennifer or Sally, and that kind of narrative was very much buried into history. Nobody in neither America nor Japan ever talk about. So then when you have if 45,000 Japanese women legally married American GIs, you just couldn't help but wonder how many women were left behind, how many children, biracial kids were left behind. Then thanks to my design team, they did it through the research. For a relatively small country like Japan, 17 orphanages were established in post-war Japan, specifically just for those biracial kids were left behind by American fathers. So when you see that, it just everything starts to click, because you can put Butterfly in a realism where everyone can understand. And then Nagasaki, unfortunately, was where the last atomic bomb was dropped. So if you set the show in that time period without changing a single word, so Act 1 in this show being 1946, within 1 year of the atomic bomb of Nagasaki, And then Act 2 and 3, we actually changed it in the original opera 3 years apart. In this show, we changed that, turned that into basically January 1953, meaning America already decided to withdraw from Japan because Korean War was about to start it. In that case, you see very clearly the shift of Americans' like power dynamic, how they are losing their impact in Japan, and then how Butterfly is still holding on very much to the illusion she has. I had the whole PowerPoint, but I also don't want to give up too much because I'm really proud of that. So, and then what I think the damage is just, because I always have audience come to me, it's like, but what about the love? I think it's 2026. Is it 2026. I think of any kind of infatuation, attraction, we are always projecting a part of our ideal self or whatever we are lacking. For those of you who do literary theory, Lacan, like Jacques Lacan, you always have this Lacanian void in your heart. Whatever you could not fulfill, you're always trying to seeking out from your partner or whoever you're attracted. And that's what I'm interested in examining Butterfly. Because musically, I think there's absolutely true infatuation. But what is Pinkerton seeing her that makes her attracted to him? It's very different from Butterfly seeing in him. And then, especially in the love duet, I think in that moment they were genuine. And I told you when I staged that in the cast, but you just got to remember, two of you are in different zip codes. For him, it's temporary pleasure, lust. And for her, she probably really think this union represented a ticket to a better life. So, and then, it's very interesting, very fortunate I get to do Butterfly. This will be my 6th Butterfly in the past 18 months. See, I said no to Butterfly for 10 years. So my directing range from Montevideo to world premiere, I do everything. Then the moment I say yes to my first Butterfly, all I ever got is Butterfly. And it's okay. Because I get to do this Butterfly concept 6 times. It changed how I see the story. If you ask me in 2024 when I did my first Butterfly, I will say, oh, it's about race. It's about white guy exploiting Asian woman stereotype, blah, 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 blah. Now that having done 6 times, my whole story, way that I see the story is changed. Because you get to see parallel tragedy going around everywhere around the world right now, regardless of race. When I opened this Butterfly in Calgary this past November, there was a huge, I don't know if you follow any news, because there was a huge scandal that Korean men are going to Philippines on tourist visa and just slept with all these young Filipino girls. And the moment they got pregnant, they just ditched them and blocked them on social media. So currently in Philippines, there's a special group of child called Kopino, Korean Kopino. And then their father, Korean father, just completely cut them off, not providing any child support. So that what the Korean, volunteers did is collect those photos, post it on Korean social media and say, identify the father. And they did. And guess what? The moment those Korean fathers, identities were revealed on social media, they all of a sudden Immerse, started sending the mother and child support. So that's in Korea and Kopino. And then very unfortunately, when I did the show in Vancouver, there's audience members say there's no way they would wait for 6 years. Well, I'll give you an example. Right around that time, I watched a documentary. So China, my own home country, has been doing major, infrastructure construction like a project in Africa, across Africa. So around that time, there was a documentary, a Chinese documentary team in Africa, and then they were being chased, the cameraman being chased by 10 years old Chinese and African kids, and who's visibly paler than local kids. So the Chinese kids, 10 years old Chinese boy, a Chinese African boy, was chasing the Chinese cameraman, saying, "Can you take me to China? Because my mom and I are still waiting for my dad to take us to China." So that just instantly changed, because to me that's still like ongoing parallel Butterfly story that has nothing to do with being white or whatever. So now at this point, I can finally coin that Butterfly to me, at heart of the story, is not about love. It's a dominant culture, a dominant gender, exploiting the vulnerable ones about their hope and wish for a better life. So the tragedy in Butterfly is not because she's a silly whatever, Asian woman. I think her strength and her wrongdoing has always been, she believed in a dream that was falsely promised, that were never meant to be delivered in the first place, and that's not her fault. that's what I'm trying to convey in this production. And I think I'm really grateful for Arizona Opera, because Arizona Opera is like the lead producer for this show. So eventually they are owning this show. Whoever wants to transfer this show, it's always going to be traveling from Arizona. What I'm really grateful for Arizona Opera is they gave me the resources to allocate a first generation, so my entire design team are all Japanese female immigrants, all like me, came to the United States at the age of 18. Did our schooling and training in the United States, working here for the past 20 years. So, and I did not know that when I hired the design team. I just know I want to tell the story from a first generation Japanese and Asian women perspective. So, and then when we sat down, go through the script, like the libretto, my entire Japanese design team said, there were literally moments in our 20 years living in America we were thinking and behaving exactly like Cio-Cio-San in this moment. And then I'm really proud to say our set, costume, and props are all from Japan. And then what I didn't know is after I assembled this team, I found out my scenic designer, Chika Shimizu, her family survived Nagasaki atomic bomb. My culture consultant, Asuka, and my costume designer, Mariko, their family survived Hiroshima atomic bomb. And I just never knew that. And because their family, when they know we're doing Butterfly in this vision, the amount of care and dedication all the design team's family put is I've never, because you're gonna see all those obi, kimono, obi, are custom built in Japan. They are all real vintage from 1950s. Because there's a very specific, complicated way to tie it. So my costume designer's mom said, there's no way the American costume shop can figure it out. So my costume designer's mother actually took professional kimono classes at her own expenses, and she hand sewed every single obi for this production. That's because how much she believed the importance of telling this narrative for this show. And then I was telling David and them in the room, because in Act 2, Suzuki, there has a praying bell. But ideally, that Japanese bell need to be the right pitch. And we couldn't find the bell with the right pitch in Arizona. So we were just writing to every single person. And then my Japanese culture consultant, Asuka, was in Japan. She said, I have a family heirloom. Is it the right pitch? Boom, it was the right pitch. So I thought, would you be okay donating this family heirloom bell into the show? She said, yeah, she brought it here. Then when we were running the show last night, she said, just so you know, that bell survived atomic bomb as well. So I feel like, when you have this vision, so what you will see is over 10 years of really thinking and dramaturgically try to solve the problem in the show. And I really believe when you have a vision, somehow the universe send those people here. So I think this production has a very, very deeper meaning and connection, or karmic connection, in the fabric, the costume, the care of the storytelling. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to toss in a tidbit I
Yeah.
just learned a few days ago. I didn't
Yeah.
know this. You mentioned that there was a woman on whom Cio-Cio-San is based.
Yeah.
What I didn't know was that she was still alive when Madama Butterfly
Yes.
premiered.
Yeah, and the real Pinkerton was also alive when Butterfly had become an instant hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the opera premiered in 1904,
Yeah,
and she died in 1906.
yeah,
Again, not a ritual suicide or anything, probably of tuberculosis, although
yeah,
that's not.
tuberculosis, yeah,
That's a different story. That's La Boheme.
yeah. Yeah.
So the reality of this, and then you bringing this into a reality that maybe we can connect to
Yeah.
a little more easily.
I just really want people to see her as a real woman, and then under that historical backdrop, that kind of woman actually truly existed. So I think you'll still get to see her kimono. You'll see the very storytelling, moving storytelling. You'll still see the tragedy. But essentially what I'm trying to do is I do want to consciously remove the safety of consuming exoticism as an audience member. And that's what I'm aiming to do in this production. I'm not really think this is what you've done, but no, you still get to see the authentic, accurate storytelling and detail. You'll see everything. But I just encourage you all to think about seeing, what is really going on in each of their mind, and why this kind of a same parallel is still prevailing across every race, every culture around the world right now.
So I think this might be a good time
Yep.
to have a little bit of singing,
Yes.
because we're going to hear the most famous aria from Madama Butterfly, but this is one of the moments, isn't it?
Yeah.
When Butterfly really articulates what that vision is
Yes.
that she has.
Yeah.
This one fine day when he will come back.
Yeah.
So let's hear that
Yes,
now.
it's great. Yeah.
that shows how, with a certain emotional context, these beautiful Puccini melodies take on a much more powerful connection. What we're always after, I think, I'm going to speak a little bit about my own experience in opera, we're after a little bit of truth. It's not just, as you say, sugarcoating and sentimental. It should really go right to the gut. Because music alone without the words and words alone without the music can't quite do what the two do together. That's why I love opera. This takes me to a thought that I shared earlier with you when we were backstage. This opera is one of the last my mom saw. She loved this piece. And so we went. It was the last time Arizona Opera put it on. And honestly, it's not my favorite opera, I have to say.
But you're coming to this Butterfly, right?
Well, you're convincing me. Yeah.
Okay, great.
My problem is that Pinkerton, it seems to me, is like the biggest jerk in all of opera. I've never liked him. I just have no use for him. Anyway, and I was saying this to my mom, okay, we'll go. She said, but the music's so pretty. So what would you say to somebody like that who is just there for the pretty music and doesn't want you to trouble them too much?
Well, well, that's exactly why I'm doing that. But here's the thing. I think people, so when I took my first sign up for my first Butterfly, I spent 2 weeks living in Nagasaki. What I did is I found Jenny Correll's oral history. She actually gave very detailed this exact event happened. So I hired a Japanese translator. So we actually tracked every single place, just walk through everything in Nagasaki geographically. That's when everything started making sense because, it's, so that's when I realized Puccini actually did quite a lot of research at the time. And he actually consulted the wife of the Japanese ambassador to Italy. So he really tried his best. But the thing is, I think that, 120 years ago, people have no idea what cultural appropriation is. And when I'm no longer teaching at university, but when I was teaching full-time at University of Michigan, I always tell my student, you cannot look at the piece with the perspective you are right now. You kind of need to understand where the creator is resonating, responding to at that time period, and what's really the core message the audience were responding to, and how can we translate that so the current audience will have a similar reaction. And also, I also firmly believe whatever most progressive, radical work we are putting out right now, 100 years later, people will find whatever we came up with right now problematic, because that's the blessing of whatever societal progression moving. So I think, but how we are treating those problematic work is showing example for future generations how to deal with problematic work. I think we need critical analysis of this work and remaking, because if we just dust it on the carpet, we are setting example of what I call artistic cowardice to the next generation of creators and audience. So that's why I think for people coming, great, come here for the music, see if I can change you, but not always. I told David, this Butterfly concept and production has been wildly success across North America, but when I was doing Vancouver was a huge hit, completely sold out. Opera Canada said it's hyper relevant, must see. But during the intermission, I was being chased by a gentleman, just literally chased me across the hall, and he said, "You ruined the perfect love story of me and my wife," because he married to a Japanese woman, and he said, I always see my marriage is the perfect Madame Butterfly story. And then I have to really think very hard and then turn to him and said, if everything between you and your wife is love, then it's not Madame Butterfly. If you're seeing her as this perfect object who will listen to you and do whatever you need, then it's not love in the first place. So because wherever I go, he always he was literally waiting for me outside the ladies' room, just want to talk to me because he's so upset with my staging. He said, "Why can't you just focus on love? Because you ruined my love story." And then I really have to tell him, I do not see Butterfly as a love story. And I think that's why if you would just perpetually, justify or allow those kind of narrative and without dealing with those very sizzling, poignant issue underneath the work, and that's why we will continue reinforce those harmful, stereotype and treatment of Asian women, or even bigger, broader scheme,
So you mentioned a term that I think we should bring up again and perhaps explain a little bit, and that's the idea of exoticism.
Yeah.
What is that? Why is it harmful?
Because you start to see them not as who they are, and also you start to see that, because we had the whole idea. Do you want to tell everyone the Arizona Disney you were telling me about?
Sure.
So you share, Arizona Disney, yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about these things too. We most of us have a vision of a place and what it is. And I call it Arizona Disney, and then you use the word Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the cowboy boots and the hats, and downtown Scottsdale looks a certain way. And I doubt that was ever very real. Or it's cuckoo clocks in Switzerland. They don't come from Switzerland, they come from Bavaria. So every place tries to live up to our idea of what it is.
And that's exactly, I think, what I call consumerism, like exoticism is, because you are consuming what you imagine Japan or Japanese woman is based on your past cultural memory, which is not accurate. In so doing, you fail to really see them as who they are as a real human. They become a symbol or whatever this false idea. So like, for instance, I have a theory, I have a lot of theories. So I always have this theories. Every Asian immigrant, if you live in the West, like being Europe or here in North America, you're just always being examined under two lenses. You're either under Cio-Cio-San lenses, where you're expected to be dolce, sweet, meek, and sorry, very submissive, and please love me. Or you're just going to be Turandot, because you're going to be a dragon lady. And I told David, I think recently I feel like I'm finally moving on to my my Turandot filter, because I start being more vocal and assertive. And none of those are really who I am. It's just whatever you have envisioned, what an Asian woman should behave based on whatever the fractured information you gleaned. So in so doing, then eventually they become a symbol. And I think that's why the issue is coming from.
And then
Yeah.
a symbol can't really have genuine emotion.
Yeah.
And then
Become
it's just,
let's say not symbol, a label. Become a label.
Yeah.
And that's really dehumanizing, and then I think that's, yeah.
I think we have this dichotomy in the West, too, between visions of women as, I'm going to be blunt here, virgins or whores. That's the Cio-Cio-San Turandot dichotomy in the West.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't come up with that
See,
formula.
that's why I said anyway.
I didn't come
Yeah.
up with that formulation, but that underlies,
Okay.
it seems to me, a lot of what's problematic in opera.
Yeah.
Like you have Carmen, who somehow brings down a good man,
Carmen, you see, like the ending is how are you going to deal with Carmen? Because essentially ending, if you treat it as, oh, he just did that because he loved her so much, then essentially you're glorifying violence over women. And what I think what we are trying to do with all the classic canon is, don't just glorify a lot of not okay issue in the name of love. There's something like much deeper issue behind this LOVE, these 4 letters. So, yeah.
So these are why some of these things are problematic, and why I'm so delighted that Arizona Opera had the vision to bring you and your design team that really comes from that soil,
Yeah.
and not just looking at it from the outside. This is the idea of the lens.
May I just share 2 things? I never forgot, because the first time I opened this Butterfly was Virginia Opera in Norfolk, Virginia. And I did not realize until opening night that that's where MacArthur was buried. So I feel like it's very interesting, because this whole show is really talking about what MacArthur and his regime did in Japan, the impact. And then during the intermission, there's a Virginia veteran came to me and he said, did you know, he was drafted in Japan post-World War II. So he said at the time, Butterfly has already become a very popular opera. So he said a lot of us when we were drafted in Japan, we were all going there thinking we're going to find our own butterfly, which I never thought about before. It changed a lot of the way I see the story. But I think the most unforgettable moment of my whole butterfly experience is at the opening night of Madama Butterfly, my lighting designer, Marie Yokoyama, who she will like the show. Right before the show was a huge success. Before we go on to take our bow, Marie just turned to me and said, Mo, I want you to remember this moment. This is us as Asian women reclaiming the ownership of our own narrative. And I never forget that. So that's what I want to share. Yeah.
What is the view of this opera in Japan?
It's very interesting. I think Japanese audience actually, so it's okay. It's they either hate it or they love it. But I always found it very interesting. When I was in Nagasaki, you just heard Umbedi. If you go to Nagasaki, the airport will be playing glass harmonica Umbedi nonstop. Umbedi. So I think, so for some Japanese, they feel like it's so great you are interested in their culture and you're portraying a love story. And for some people, they will absolutely hate it. They will say that's not how Japanese women are. Yeah. But when we did the show in Canada, for both Vancouver, Calgary, Japanese ambassador and consulate came to see the show. And both diplomats told us it's the first time they see butterfly being done. Absolutely, every detail was right, accurate, manner, everything. First time. And then in Calgary, the consulate's wife actually is, the child of American GI and Japanese mother. So the consulate wife was crying the whole time. And she said, I never thought my mom's story would be put on stage. So we are just very excited, and most importantly, Brian, if you're there, I'm really, really grateful, because Arizona really put so much care into the storytelling process. They even even our professional dressers, local dressers, are taking kimono dressing lessons. So they invest to prepare. So we are really excited and proud to share this production with you very soon. Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes for you to ask questions. I hope I will be able to see you if you hold up your hand. It's very bright up here, but, well, right here I can see, yes.
The man that was running after you, he spoiled this for my marriage. Where was his wife?
The wife is very perfectly dressed in kimono, standing quietly on the side.
Go in.
I don't know. I couldn't really read her, but yeah, because yeah.
Oh, what was the wife doing of the man that ran?
Oh, I'm
after
sorry, I
you?
should have repeated the
The man
question.
that
Yeah.
ran after and said you ruined my marriage.
Yeah. The perfect love story. Yeah.
The perfect love story that ends with one of the two people dying. I mean, spoiler alert, right?
Yeah.
And the other one taking off the child. My daughter has sung the role of Kate Pinkerton. My daughter is Miriam Schildkret, whom many of you also know, and who will do the pre-concert, the pre-performance talks for Madama Butterfly. So, and she's much more personable than I am, so you will certainly enjoy that. Anything about the sort of minor characters, Goro?
Yeah.
And,
So Goro, in this, we are using Sam Krause, who is a wonderful, wonderful resident artist, but naturally he's not Asian, right? So he was very nervous and say, oh, am I? So what we did research, during 19th century Meiji era, there were already, naturalized white Japanese citizens. So they are, from Ireland or somewhere, and they moved to Japan. They become the go-between, and then they essentially changed their name to Japanese name. And then had gained Japanese citizenship. So I say, Sam, I think so what I see is it's, Goro in this end. So we are not really I think the issue of Butterfly is if you try to yellow face people as a non-Asian cast to play Asian, that's the issue. And in this show, we find, again, historical basic or anchor for him so he can actually live. So for every minor character, I think Goro, you see how the clash between the two cultures. And then how each of them, aside from Pinkerton and Sharpless sometimes, aside from Pinkerton, how hard they are just merely trying to survive in the cracks of those two clashing cultures. Goro in this case is also the same, because essentially he's also denounced by both sides, because American treated him not like equal. Japanese feel like, you are just, tyrannizing all of us. So there's kind of this kind of very complex, distorted identity on Goro as well. And Cio-Cio-San is doing an amazing job portraying that. And then Kay Pinkerton also, she has agency, and we talk about that. So I think for this show, you will see I deliberately designed, I think Sharpless Suzuki are the most interesting character because essentially to me they are the parallel. I always say they are the two parallel Cassandras. Both see what's coming, and both neither of them intervene enough to stop the tragedy. And that's why in Act 3, you see both of them completely break the character they were in Act 1, because I think there's so much turmoil and regrets or pain that you did not stop what you think like would happen. So I try to really give everyone very sincere and very human reading of every moment, so people are not just archetypes types in the show. Yeah, even Kay Pinkerton, she has an idea. And I think, in this setup, you're seeing the staging and the costume. I think, because in my staging, Butterfly in Act 2 is trying to hold on to whatever the idea of her American wife she has, which you see in the staging. And for her is, and this is from my own design team with conversation, for all of us at one point in our time living in America, we all had this realization is it doesn't matter how hard you try, you will never be complete or completely American enough for American. And that for every immigrant is probably the most heartbreaking realization. The difference is for our generation, we had the vocabulary, the toolkit to cope with that. But for her to hang on to this false identity for so long, and to me, the most devastating moment in the show is when she sees the real American wife, and then realizing what she's been presenting herself and what Kay Pinkerton is. And that's when she realized, oh, that's why they should everything is done, because I would never be American enough like her. So I think the two wives, like that encounter, is actually the most heartbreaking, devastating, and also most human moment to me in the entire show. So yeah, so you should go see it and find it. I still cry. I know I staged the show 6 times, so I know the staging, but every time I saw them doing it, I still got tears. So I would say I put I think I put 20 years of my own tears and heart into the show. A lot of things are coming from my own personal understanding or reckoning of my life living in the States. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to start, hello, you guys were farther away, by just thanking you both for being here and thanking your wonderful pianist and singer. If you want more Butterfly, which I don't know how you couldn't after this, I just wanted to let you know of a couple things we have coming up at Arizona Opera. We do a lot leading up to the shows. Tomorrow evening we have a book club. If you want to come and just chat more about Madama Butterfly and the books, it's okay if you didn't read it. We have a really lively discussion that's down at the Opera Center. On Saturday evening we have a program called The World of Madama Butterfly. We've partnered with the Japanese Friendship Garden down in Central Phoenix, and they will be doing a live tea ceremony demonstration. We will have Yuna Lee, who Mo mentioned earlier. She'll be performing some different excerpts from Butterfly, and then our own Brian Damaris is going to do just a little bit of a preview, so please come down to the Opera Center for that. Next Wednesday at 12:15, Sam will be singing in our Opera for Lunch program. It's not Butterfly themed, but if you want to hear. Sam and our other wonderful studio artists, Yi Chen and Wan Ting, will be at the piano. We'll be doing that. And then, of course, our two Madama Butterflies in Phoenix, January 31st and February 1st, with Miriam Schildkret giving the pre-show lecture. And then on Sunday, we do a post-show talk back as well with some artists from the show. So lots coming up. If you have any questions, we're in the back. If you'll join me and give one more round of applause, please come up and